Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to this video. Hola, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos a este video. A few weeks ago, I celebrated my 1000 day streak on Duolingo, and on this occasion I want to talk a little bit about how I learned Spanish. More precisely, how I learned Mexican Spanish. If we haven't met yet, hi, my name is Hannah and I make videos mostly about art, but also vlog style videos and other random videos like this one. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story with Spanish, then the resources that I used, and lastly about language learning in general. My native language is German, Hallo, wie geht's? But I have learned English since the first grade in school, so since I was about 7 years old. And I have always wanted to learn a third language. In school, I also had French for the first 4 years, and then I could decide between French and Latin, and I chose Latin, which is a language that you don't really speak. So I always had the urge to learn a language that I can speak, a third language. At first I tried to stick to French, kind of teaching myself, but that proved to be quite difficult. And at some point in school I had the chance to do Spanish as an extracurricular course, so I did that for 2 years. But sadly not a lot came about from this course. I learned the days of the week, the month of the year, and some very basic grammar structures. Then in 2015 I went on an interrail tour through Spain, and for that I started to learn Spanish again half a year earlier. By the time I started the trip, I was able to order some things in restaurants, order tickets, and ask where the bus is going. I think I didn't even have A1 level. I don't think I could have had even basic conversations, but I could get around the country. After this trip, however, I lost my Spanish pretty quickly again, which I noticed in 2019 when I visited La Gomera and I could hardly understand anything. But something that I learned is that buses are called guaguas there, which I really like. In 2020, after a pretty tough breakup, I wanted a project and I decided to learn a language, or rather 2 languages, for real this time. The languages of my choice were Spanish, you guessed it, and Japanese, because I've always been interested in learning a language that is not Indo-German, to kind of see how the structure differs and everything. And I also wanted to be able to draw kanji with a paintbrush. However, after 2 weeks of learning these 2 languages, I met my now partner, who was Mexican, and suddenly I had a very good reason to learn Spanish. I ditched Japanese pretty quickly after that because I wanted to focus 100% on Spanish and dedicate all of my time into learning as quickly as possible. And yeah, that's kind of how it all started. So let's get into the resources. But before we do that, I just want to say that this video is not sponsored by any of the resources, apps, whatnot mentioned here. One of the most important resources that I used is Duolingo. As mentioned before, I just completed a 1000 day streak. There have been some kind of rest days. You can use a streak freeze to keep your streak going when you don't have time to study for a day. But other than that, I have kept going for the past 3 years now, and I'm still using Duolingo every day. I find that it helps me a lot with keeping my memory active and using grammatically correct sentences. It is very interactive and fun and structured in chapters where you go kind of along a path and progress over time with the level of difficulty. But I really recommend using other sources outside of Duolingo too, to get a better grasp and overview of the grammar especially. To do this, I had a grammar book that I worked through completely, and it really helped me set a good foundation. I also watched a bunch of videos on YouTube that stem from a DVD, which someone kindly put on the internet, probably illegally, I don't know. I'm gonna try to find the videos and link them down below. I didn't finish all of them. There's hours and hours of content, and it's based on a story of a teacher teaching a student with a kind of story wrapped around them. It's kind of sweet and also helped me practice my listening. Apart from that, I have used mainly two apps to get a broader range of vocabulary, which are Phase 6 or Phase 6 in German, and Drops. Phase 6 uses a concept where you repeat the vocabulary you're learning after a certain number of days. So the first phase is the initial learning, and then the second phase is after 1 day, the third phase after, 3 days, and then the sixth phase are 90 days, so 3 months. And after that, so with the seventh phase, basically, you're supposed to have the vocabulary in your long-term memory, so you don't need to repeat it again. I have found this concept really useful. There is a free version of the app available where you can insert vocabulary manually, but only up to a certain number of words. You get an unlimited number of words with the premium membership, but you can also buy kind of dictionary vocabulary books in the app, which is independent of the membership. And this is what I did after I had the membership for a year. I bought 2 vocabulary books by Langenscheidt, one with a basic vocabulary and one with more advanced vocabulary, and I'm still learning with the second one. So I went through the whole first book and now I'm learning the advanced vocabulary. Drops is a solely picture-based app that has vocabulary categorized in different themes, so for example food or tourism and stuff like that. And I really like to use that for a period of time because I found that it had vocabulary that was missing in other learning apps or environments. I also tried out other popular language learning apps, but I haven't stuck with them because the free version was pretty limited, and I found that I already had a lot of resources that were really helpful and that I liked to work with. Other very popular tips, I think, for language learning are to watch movies, TV shows, and videos in Spanish or the language that you're learning. It can be really helpful to watch movies or shows that you already know, and at first maybe put subtitles and then later turn them off to really get a grasp on the listening, because that's what I to this day find the most difficult, to understand people in real life. You may also want to read books, magazines, or articles in Spanish, which can help you understand vocabulary from context. Hello, Hannah from the editing room here. Podcasts are also a really good resource. There are podcasts specifically for language learning, for Spanish learning, also geared towards learning Spanish, or Mexican Spanish, or Argentinian Spanish, anything you like. But of course also just general podcasts in Spanish. Especially with learning Spanish, it's a really good idea to focus on the kind of style or variant of Spanish that you want to learn, because there are differences in the pronunciation but also the grammar and words that are used between Spanish from Spain and Spanish from Mexico and other Latin American countries. And another thing that came to my mind is writing in Spanish, which really forces you to use your knowledge on grammar and question like what is correct, but also gives you time to look it up and makes you use your vocabulary. And listening to music can also be a great activity to get more into the language while you're doing other things, just to surround yourself as much as you can with the language that you're learning. To do that, you also might want to set your phone or other electronic devices to Spanish, but I only recommend that if you have a certain level of Spanish, because otherwise you may get lost in your phone and it can be a little bit difficult. But it definitely helps to, again, broaden your vocabulary. The best way, however, to learn is to have someone to practice with, and there are obviously different ways to do this. You can look for a tandem partner, or I'm sure that there are also apps to do this now. I obviously had the super big advantage that my partner is native Mexican and I could practice with him and ask him things about Spanish as well. And to this day, he is the one I understand best in Spanish. And yeah, I think those are the main resources that I used. But real talk, am I fluent? No. I can understand people when they're talking to me directly pretty well. I'm not scared to go out into the world alone in Mexico or other Spanish speaking countries anymore. But sometimes I do have a hard time following conversations when the person is not directly talking to me, but it's kind of in a group situation. Also, TV is sometimes difficult for me to understand. I think it just still takes a lot of focus and attention from me to follow conversations. Sometimes my brain just checks out and then I lose track of what was said. I guess when we start to learn a language, we would like to do it as quickly as possible. And there are a ton of videos on the internet about learning a language in a month or 3 months or I don't know how little time. And honestly, I kind of doubt that anyone can really learn a language in that short amount of time. Maybe, yes, you can grasp a basic understanding of the language, and maybe you can even engage in some basic conversations, but to really learn the language, to learn the thousands and thousands of words that you need to become completely fluent and really advanced in a language, it just takes time. Your brain is not a machine, and when you first started learning a language, which is your native language, it took you years. Babies spend the first few years just listening to what is spoken around them, and eventually they start to make the sounds that this native language is made up of, and then they start to learn single words and eventually build sentences. But up from that point, when they can understand a lot and say what they want, it still takes years until they have this full range of vocabulary of thousands and thousands of words. I'm not saying this to discourage you from learning super quickly, but just to put a kind of reality check on things and to say that language learning is more of a marathon than a sprint. And to put this expectation on it, that it's better to learn a little bit every day than to go about it thinking, oh, I'm going to learn 3 hours every day. And then after a month, I'm done learning this language and I'm fully fluent. That's not how it works, I think. So go about it with ease and give yourself grace, celebrate the little wins, and just try to keep your memory active and add on to it every day a little bit. You're doing amazing, and even if you don't learn for a number of days or even weeks or months, you can always pick it back up and it's gonna come back easier and quicker the second time around. For me, the biggest win about language learning is that every language comes kind of with its own worldview, and you get to shift your mind a little bit and see the world from a different perspective. Obviously, you also get to understand other people and kind of their way of being and seeing the world and their culture, which is amazing. I really hope that this video was interesting or helpful to you on your language learning journey, and I would love to hear what you think about what I said about language learning. Do you agree or do you disagree? Do you think that language learning can be done really quickly? Are you currently learning a language? Are you learning Spanish or another language? What are your tips, tricks, and resources? I would love to hear from you in the comments, also for other people watching who might find it interesting. So please share it down below. Yeah, if you're interested in my content, especially videos about art and my life, please subscribe. And it would really help me out if you could give this video a like. Probablemente quieran que hablo un poco de español, entonces aquí vamos. Hola, ¿qué tal? Soy Hannah, soy de Alemania y hago videos sobre arte y mi vida y otros videos muy random como este. Si te interesa qué hago aquí en este canal, por favor sígueme y me ayudaría mucho si me podrías dar un like en este video, un me gusta y te veo en el próximo video. Muchas gracias por ver. So let's get into sorry. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.